be in the presence of some amazing people out there. All right, I'm going to try this. Okay, here we go. Let me know if I need to do that again, okay? Hi to all of you. Can you hear me in the back? Usually my voice carries. People are always telling me to shut up. This is the first time they said get louder. All right. I'm just an opinionated girl. I'm no attorney, but I'll take a stab at this. I want to thank the Finicum family for inviting me. What an honor. We stand on hallowed ground, don't we? We're honoring a man who was the salt of the earth, to convene a meeting that never happened, an important meeting. There is no place that I would rather be today. I am a really lucky girl, and I want to tell you why. Every day I get an amazing opportunity to discuss what's really going on in America and discuss the truth for 3 solid hours a day, nationally, in cities like Chicago and Tampa, Miami and Denver and Salt Lake. For the last 5 years, I've devoted my life to discovering the truth about our world and our government and what is really going on. I have thought seriously about changing the name of my show to I cannot believe I just said that out loud. It feels like that every day. With this new administration, I feel optimistic about free speech in the future. Had it gone the other way, not so much security in that, especially for what I do for a living. I want to talk about truth in media. I know you laugh when I say that, because it's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? It's kind of like government intelligence. We live in an era where the mainstream media is so embarrassed by all the lying that they have fake news, has resorted to calling everybody else fake news. Imagine the hypocrisy there. I used to have to convince people about the facts. I used to have to lay out the case that the media was lying. I don't have to anymore. Now it's so obvious. They're just making it really easy for me now. The American people are finally in on the con, and I'm so glad. The media is carefully controlled by 5 elite organizations. In 1983, it used to be 50. Now it's 5. And they're on the same wavelength, believe me. Have we ever had honest truth in media? I'm going to give you a 3-minute history lesson. Well, maybe 5 minutes. I want to be honest. It could be 5. 2,500 years ago, in a little tiny city named Athens, the citizens first linked free speech to this revolutionary idea that people should govern themselves. Can you imagine? They called it a democracy. They practiced this novel form of government by coming together in a physical place, a place of assembly. Then any free man could stand up, speak his mind, and propose a public policy measure. This is absolutely where politicians were born. I'm sure they camped out. In the 1500s, Gutenberg invented the printing press, and it was a marriage made in heaven. Free speech and the free press. And in 1791, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution gives a special hat tip to Gutenberg, the invention of the press, and it says, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of press or speech, freedom of speech or of the press. The problem was that no one realized that it could be bought. Of course, right after America became America in the 1800s, the parties rushed in to, we'll just say they wanted to defray the cost for us people. And so what they did was they subsidized the newspapers throughout the 1800s. The newspapers, well, they were all in, strings and all. Now the media does not disclose to you that the scripts are written and okayed by the powers to be. In fact, not only is it controlled, it's infiltrated. Fast forward to 1977, Carl Bernstein of Watergate fame revealed that more than 400 journalists and news executives worked for the CIA. They included journalists from the New York Times, Time Magazine, which was already bought and sold by the elite anyway, the Washington Post, and the TV networks like CBS. And a little known fact, one of the first projects of the CIA in the late 1940s, after it was formed, was to infiltrate the press, namely the Washington Post, and move people into positions of power within the media. The hope was to do so quietly infiltrate that no one would be able to recognize the difference between the CIA and the die-hard journalists and editors. Just recently, Dr. Udo Olkoff, remember that name, an international reporter, admitted that for 25 years, the CIA wined and dined him and offered him favors, even getting him into countries that he didn't have access to, so that they could control the story that went out. And Dr. Olkoff tried to offer up the truth in his articles. His stories were shelved, changed, or downplayed. After 25 years, he had had enough and started talking about this in the press. I really wanted to have him on my show this month, but he passed away from a sudden heart attack about 3 weeks ago. None of this is theory. This is all admitted by the CIA and media organizations. In fact, we had Senate hearings back in the 70s. I have it on tape. CBS freely admits that they allowed the CIA to dictate their stories and that they held high positions within the organization. Even during World War I, reporters were rewarded and knighted for their silence and collusion. British Prime Minister David Lloyd George said if people really knew the truth, the war would be stopped tomorrow. But of course they don't know and they can't know. My friend and frequent guest on the show, John Rappaport, he's an ex-mainstream reporter. He had spoken and interviewed a reporter from a major paper and described the propaganda game in this way. So get this. This is what he said. We know what stories we can't cover. Nobody needs to prep us. Our editors know too. Otherwise, they'd never get to be our editors. Apparently, some travel was necessary, but I knew that I could turn out reams of copy without ever leaving my apartment, because I grasped the fundamental angle that I was supposed to pursue for the story. It was the first time I fully realized how easy the job of reporting could be. Assemble a list of reliable sources who would support the mandatory point of view, walk right into a prepared group of corporate and think tank allies, pull the copy from wire services, and rewrite stories in a way that bolstered the idea that the American empire was really spreading democracy to the less fortunate. It was a walk in the park. 20 years later, I saw the same overall pattern in hundreds of major media stories, but the point of view and the mandate had changed. Now it was all about globalism. The covert op was the takedown of America in order to squash the last vestige of political freedom and integrate the nation in a new economic order, end quote. A critical thinker is going to ask these two questions. Who benefits and what's the agenda? The media is a business and it has obvious goals. Money. If it bleeds, it leads. Fear, drama, conflict. They drive the money, they make you want to watch. And they like to save time. Get this. The State Department produces what's called VNRs, video news releases. These are news clips. You watch these on your local news broadcast. Maybe you didn't know where they were coming from. The clips are designed and approved by the State Department. The message is carefully crafted, and so is the perception of the story. VNRs, these video news releases, are manipulated to show you what's going on in foreign lands. They control the text, they control what you're hearing, and all the important subtext, the attitude, the picture, and what's between the lines. The goal is to keep the masses asleep. They will keep you emotionally invested into what's happening with those Kardashians and what idiotic university students are telling you about political correctness. But they won't let you in on the erosion of your God-given inalienable rights. So the media paints a lie. And why does this protest, the protest that took place a year ago, why is it so important? Why does it matter? Just 200 years ago, 95% of our lands were farmers and ranchers. Today, it's 1.6%. 1.6. We are losing America's finest. We are losing our ranchers and farmers. They are disappearing because of endless agencies in control, regulations, costs, fees, fines, and often bullied off their property, or they just give up because they can't fight it anymore. This is what's happening on the West. Let me tell you what's happening on the East. Many of you don't know this, maybe, I'm not sure, but on the East Coast, thanks to the Conservation Act, farmers who cannot afford to pay their taxes on their ranches are being coaxed by the feds to turn over their property to the government in lieu of taxes. What they're promised is that the land will stay in their family forever. They even give them a handsome little placard, a little sign with their family name that says the Smith family owns this farm, but they've given it to the Conservation Act. They do get to tell them what they're going to grow. But I want you to listen to what's in the fine print. At the bottom of the contract, it says that they sign over their property to the United States and its successor. Did you know we have a successor? Why is this such a big deal? Why are the feds grabbing up land? Property rights separate us, the American people, from third world countries. The right to own property is at the very root of being an American. Land ownership creates wealth, and it takes people out of slavery. That's how we were able to do it in just 240 years, right? So how has the government manipulated the people into grabbing up over 600 million acres of land that they have no right to control when the amount that they're supposed to own is clearly dictated in the Constitution? In the mid-30s, groups like the Wilderness Society cropped up. Small groups then admitted freely that they were working quietly with the government to usurp property, to hand it over for government control, but under the guise of protecting it from us, the humans. Did you know we were the enemy? I don't remember a trial, but we are. We are the enemy to land. At the time, in the 30s and 40s, they were afraid of the coming automobile boom, so they decided, in their own words, to battle uncompromisingly, that was their words, to get land in the hands of the feds. With the creation of the BLM and all the federal agencies that are managing it, to the peril of the ranchers and farmers, land is taken from the public to protect a flower, a frog, a weed, a flea that dwells on the frog, that dwells on a flower, that dwells on a weed patch. And in our case, in southern Utah, we got the not native to Utah turtle, the desert tortoise. We even pay for Turtle Watch. Do you want to know what Turtle Watch is? Turtle Watch is when we, the taxpayer, pay the police to sit in their cars as policemen to make sure that the turtles don't cross the road and get smashed. Government intelligence, that's what that is. And in Nevada, so many were being saved, they started euthanizing them, killing them. Like I said, government intelligence. When the desert tortoise was listed as threatened in 1990 in Nevada, the Nature Conservancy and the Conservation Fund worked with the county, bought out 16 BLM grazing permits from local ranchers over a decade. It just left one stockman with a significant herd of cattle in the area, Clive and Bundy. The last rancher standing. The despicable Harry Reid, oh, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? The despicable Harry Reid started describing the last rancher standing as a domestic terrorist. A rancher as a domestic terrorist. Have you met a rancher? That's why that's so baffling. Harry Reid doesn't mind selling out his own fellow citizen. I don't know if you've thought about this, But Harry, the senator, has never had a problem with the feds owning 80% of his own state. He never fought it, and the last time I checked, people don't fly into Vegas to go hiking in Nevada federally protected wilderness. Why does Harry Reid care if the ranchers have their lands or not? Why is he so threatened by someone fighting for their cattle grazing rights? Or is there a motivation there? What partnerships and deals are taking place with foreign countries for control of our lands through politicians? If you're a good journalist, go write about that. The issue is so important to the government that they are crafting the mainstream media to turn patriots into terrorists. They seek to discredit anyone who stands up for their property rights. They will turn the nation against you. They will imprison you. They will kill you. Why? Because the government has to control the land. You control the land, you control the people. The very minute the protest started, articles appeared on the internet with the following buzzwords, all ready to go to the AP. Armed men, led by militia Bundy brothers, take over federal building in rural Oregon. First headline, town warily watches as militia takes refuge. Feds are on the scene to keep us safe. From the right-wing armed men. Every single publication in mainstream media regurgitated the exact viewpoint, the same exact sentence, the same exact lie. Ask yourself why or how did every single mainstream media get the same exact story? How does that happen? The men that came to Oregon were seeking to bring attention to the American people that their own federal lands were being grabbed. And the incarceration, unlawful incarceration of the Hammonds. But the people never heard about this. They weren't acting in a threatening way. They just wanted to speak. They just wanted to talk. They wanted the media to print the truth. So for all your reporters out there, here's some truth. Not one reporter in mainstream media checked its facts. Ammon and Ryan Bundy and Lavoy Finicum were not now, nor never, nor ever part of a militia. It was a lie to make them look threatening. One simple check by a curious reporter would have exposed this, but the narrative had already been laid out. Every article written said they were militant or part of a militia, and that they would only use the word standoff. Maybe reporters aren't aware that it takes two to have a standoff, because the only ones in the standoff were the feds. So why check the facts? After all, these are just a bunch of ranchers with guns, right? Forget that each one of them have a concealed permit to carry, that pesky old little Second Amendment right. Let's just paint them as armed militant leaders, ready to shoot everyone in sight. If you say the ranchers who all carry permits, then that's not a very good story. Just to give you an idea, comparatively, when Occupy Wall Street came about in 2011, it had violence, attacks, arrests, and people trashed public property and private property for months on end. And President Obama came out and said he sympathized with them and that they needed a voice. In Oregon, the protests had to be shut down so quickly because people, they just didn't want us to ask questions. So you have a sheriff who takes his marching orders from the feds and refuses to stand up for property rights of the Hammonds. Even though Occupy Wall Street went on for months, the feds decided they wouldn't let this go on for more than 3 weeks. There was no need for the feds to come in to handle things. But they were all dressed up in their layers of combat gear, maybe excited for another Ruby Ridge. Oh, did I say that out loud? The protesters were not threatening. The feds had to make it look like they were a real threat to the people. This was easy to see if you were paying attention. The protesters said again and again they were there to talk and educate and bring attention to what was going on. Not a single bullet was fired. Lavoy said he could feel the FBI creating the threat, ramping up the intensity, acting differently towards them. This was a show by the feds, and on January 26th, it was no traffic stop, it was an ambush. Yeah. staged a blind man's curve with an abrupt stop so he couldn't slow down. They were ready and waiting for Lavoy in the trees as he was trying to flee to a constitutional sheriff for protection. He got out of the truck with his hands up to draw attention away from those in the vehicle for safety reasons. His hands were in the air. He was shot from behind in the back. We all see the grainy footage that they tried to pass off as 2017 technology. But even then, it's hard to conceal the truth. He was murdered within minutes. The agents never even tried to speak with him or de-escalate the situation. Nothing. He did not shoot at the agents. He was not a threat in any way. It's obviously a problem, the mainstream media and the spin. They invent the news, and those gullible enough to believe them, I get it. This is an issue. But I'd like to tell you what I think the real problem is. I rode a friend's mule in the funeral procession at Lavoy's funeral. It was a humbling, incredible experience. And as we rode, the topic of my profession came up. I told him the danger I face is that I could never love my job too much. And he looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I can't love my job too much because I could possibly be swayed from telling the truth to please somebody. Climbing the career ladder could become too important and could challenge the integrity of the job that I do. Easily, since it depends on advertisers who think you're going to be unnerved if you hear the truth. I don't care what any of you do for a living. Every single one of us are citizens of this land first. Your job is just your vehicle to make money while you are here. It should never dictate who you become, but it takes many of us average citizens to carry out the will of those that seek to destroy our freedom. They cannot do it without you. It's willing participants. So I say this. To the policeman who violates the Fourth Amendment because he wants to get the arrest for the promotion, to the journalist who decides that one article of lies won't matter because they need a paycheck, to the judge who says the Constitution is not allowed in the courtroom because it may interfere with the pre-designated verdict. To the informants that agreed to sell out their fellow man for a couple of bucks. The one thing to figure out there is that if they need to use you to trick somebody into getting somebody, maybe it's not worth the get. To the feds seated in the audience today that are trying to conceal themselves as ranchers. Maybe you're just looking for something to report to your superiors, or maybe you think you're protecting us, but look around you, who do you see? People that love America, ranchers and farmers. What are they going to do, farm us to death? Here's the rub. I actually trust you more. You, the ranchers and farmers.
Damn straight.
I would flee to you for safety any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Hell yeah.
They look at me like a fellow citizen, right? And not a pawn in a game of ambition. To the elected officials that take the lobbyist money and tell themselves that they have to play the game until they get a little more powerful, maybe 5 terms from now. To the U.S. Marshal who thinks he's got the power of God and can throw a shackled man down a stairwell because he feels like it. To the prosecuting attorney that only cares about the win and not the truth. To the prison guards who deny food to the incarcerated. To the BLM worker who cuts off water to ranchers' property because he wants to work into the next power position within the agency. To all of you who may be involved in the infringing of another's rights and told it is for the greater good, there is no good that comes from selling out your fellow man. All of us are possible cogs in the wheel of a tyrannical system designed to take our freedom. The America we have right now is the America that we created. We no longer want a judicial system where Hillary goes free and patriots are incarcerated because they love freedom. I actually said this on the air too, but I told my children that in America today, if they ever aspired to be a federal district court judge, a state DA, or a U.S. Marshal, they might as well aspire to be in the mafia. Have you played a part in supporting, aiding, or abetting in this? Do you realize that you're digging your own grave too? Maybe you tell yourself that just a few acts against your fellow man couldn't possibly amount to anything. I mean, after all, who would know, right? There is a word used in the preamble of the Constitution 3 different times. Without this single word, we would have never had an America. The word is united. We had to have something that united us as a country in order to band together to leave British rule. We Americans may not agree on much, and that's okay, but we were united in our core principles of freedom. Without unity in that, the constitutional government simply can't work. We established justice, providing for the common defense, and rules to keep the government limited. We did all that together, despite how different we are. We have a choice now, just as we did then. We can be united in our slavery, or we can be united in our liberty, but we have to stand together. Even you citizens with a little bit of power over the other, you are not exempt from this. This is exactly what happened to John Stockwell. He was a CIA agent that came out in the 1980s. CIA was carrying out major atrocities against people. He went to the higher-ups, and they told him that he would understand what they were doing, or what he was forced to do, that he would understand someday. He did it, he trusted, and when he finally got to the top of the CIA ladder, he realized that there was no understanding of the heinous acts they were doing. It was all smoke and mirrors, designed to keep a good little soldier doing what they wanted him to do as they violated human rights and orchestrated coups in Central and South America to benefit the elite. How many go along with blind trust, knowing what they're doing is wrong? Lavoy Finicum said, "Some things are worth more than your life," and I believe freedom is one of them. If we don't have the First Amendment, we have nothing. If we can't protect it using the Second Amendment, we have nothing. And to all of those in law enforcement here today, I'm not discrediting you. You're there for a role. You have a role in this country, and I'm glad that you're there to put your life on the line to get the bad guy. But along the way, you're going to have to ask yourself, really, who is the bad guy? There is a role for good government. We need limited government that knows its bounds of authority, and those that are wise enough to stand or to understand limited government and the law. We appreciate you. I say to anyone who can exercise power over another, with that power comes great responsibility to your fellow man. The citizens' rights that you violate today will have an impact on your own freedom down the road. You are a cog in the wheel. The country you grumble about, the anger you feel, and we've allowed to have happen over 241 years, we have contributed to this as citizens by doing these things. In my line of work, he who tells the story creates the winners and the losers. The media has the power to make a nation of 330 million people either loathe you or love you. Just ask Trump. That's a lot of power. Case in point, framing the story to make those protesters look dangerous, dominated the media. The not guilty verdict was the most amazing story of the century given the bought-off courts. Because when you spend millions of taxpayer dollars and have no case, that's a little embarrassing. To the media present, use this power responsibly. Instead of creating the story to invoke an agenda, how about telling the story as is and letting the audience decide? Telling the truth is not hard. It's very simple. You sleep better at night. There's just all kinds of bonuses. The media is only supposed to relay the information, not invent it. And if you cannot tell the truth, leave the job. If enough of you refuse to deliver the propaganda, the media will fall and be forced to reinvent itself. Like every industry that loses its compass and screws those that it serves, it has to reach rock bottom. Let it walk away. There are other jobs. Stand for something bigger than yourself. Choose your integrity over your ambition. We all won that Revolutionary War. We all get the gift of living in this free republic. You will either contribute to its success or we all lose it together. You can convince yourself that you can sell out a few times, and when you get more power in the future, you're just going to do the right thing, right? I know elected officials that feel that way. I can promise you this, after you have sold out again and again on your way up, you will not care about doing the right thing once you get there. It takes a whole lot of people just doing their jobs to create a nation that fears its government. The Nazis' only defense was that they were just doing what they were told. Are we going to learn from history that this is no excuse to abuse a fellow citizen? Are you just doing your job? The guys waiting in the trees for Lavoy, were they just doing what they were told to do? They could have made a choice. God gave every single one of us a brain and a conscience. What every citizen does matters when you're doing it to another citizen. I don't care how powerful you think you are at the end of the day. We are all human beings. We all get buried 6 feet deep, and we are not buried with our power. We're buried with our principles. That's what we're buried with. We must face our dependency to security head on. We have to be willing to walk away from it all, the very comfortable lives that we lead. We need citizens to wake up and pray to God again. We need politicians to actually read the bills. We need scientists who won't take a payoff for an opinion, and talking heads that refuse to read that script. Look around you. Who's here? Ranchers, farmers, Constitution-loving patriots, average citizens who love America. There is no violence here. There's only a will to change the hearts and minds of men and women in this country through education and an understanding of God-given right. If you want to fear someone, or you want to fear a movement, fear those seeking to undermine your rights that reside in the highest positions of power in this country. Fear those that conspire to keeping the masses asleep. Fear those that seek to imprison patriot-loving Americans to cover up insidious wrongdoing and illegal activity. It is not you versus me. It is freedom versus slavery. Be faithful, be fearless. Because to be fearless, you start with a little bit of faith. And that enables you to have that kind of fearless mentality, to go out in the world and speak louder and do more. On my Fox News jacket, I have a piece of the tarp that belonged to Lavoy. It's there to remind me to speak loudly, to do what I know is right. And what gives me hope are all of you. There are so many good Americans. There are so many good people in this world. What did Lavoy stand for? He stood for everything that is important. He gave his life for that stand. He knew just how important our property rights are to the core of being an American. He was trying to deliver that message to all of you right here in John Day a year ago. God bless him for trying. God bless our country if we are smart enough to keep it. Lavoy said it best. It doesn't matter how it ends, it matters how you stand.
Hefley Dalley, ladies and gentlemen. Kate, thank you. I have no earthly idea why you got fired. And then we